Earth had always been looked down upon by the galactic powers, the great empires of the universe, with their advanced technology and vast fleets, barely gave Earth a second thought. To them, humanity was just another primitive species, clinging to survival on a small blue planet in the outer reaches of the galaxy. It wasn't even worth paying attention to. Earth's attempts at interstellar diplomacy were often ignored, and their military was seen as nothing more than a joke. The galaxy had seen countless species rise and fall, and to the other empires, Earth's time was coming soon. But Earth had something the others didn't: resilience. Captain John Davis had spent most of his life serving in the Earth Defense Initiative, EDI, a secret organization that had been working tirelessly to build something that could change the fate of humanity. John, a man who once dreamed of exploring the stars, now found himself at the heart of a struggle that would determine whether humanity would remain an insignificant speck or rise to challenge the giants of the galaxy. It all started with the Vanguard, Earth's greatest secret, the prototype warship that had the potential to rival the most powerful ships in the galaxy. For years, a small group of brilliant scientists and engineers had worked in secret, pouring every ounce of their knowledge and creativity into the Vanguard. The ship was not just a weapon. It was a statement that Earth had a place in the galaxy, a statement that humanity would not go down without a fight. John had been chosen to lead the Vanguard's first mission. He wasn't sure why he was the one picked. He was just a regular officer, but his reputation for thinking outside the box and staying calm under pressure made him the perfect candidate. His crew was a mix of the best and brightest Earth had to offer, but John had no illusions. He knew that the Vanguard was still untested, and it would face enemies far beyond what Earth's military had ever known. They were up against a galaxy that had no reason to take them seriously. At the same time, tensions between Earth and the Galactic Empire were rising. The Empire, a massive and powerful force that controlled most of the galaxy, had been growing bolder in its actions. Their fleets, enormous and well-equipped, were intimidating to every species they encountered. The Empire's leaders, arrogant and dismissive, considered Earth little more than a nuisance. Admiral Corrin, a high-ranking officer of the Galactic Empire, was one of those who had no respect for Earth. To him, humanity was nothing but an annoyance. He had visited Earth as part of a diplomatic mission, only to scoff at their attempts to build a fleet of warships capable of challenging the Empire. He mocked Earth's engineers, calling their designs outdated and ineffective. He even laughed at the idea that Earth could ever produce something that could stand up to the might of the Empire. "Do they really think they can fight us?" Corrin had asked during a meeting with Earth's top leaders. "A primitive species like them should be grateful that we haven't wiped them out yet." John had been in the room that day, his fists clenched at his sides. He had felt the sting of Corrin's words like a slap to his face, but there was something else that burned inside him. A desire to prove the Empire wrong, to show that Earth was more than just a weak planet. Earth's leaders had warned Admiral Corrin that Earth was not a threat to the Empire, but they were lying to themselves. Earth had spent years quietly developing the Vanguard, a ship unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Vanguard was not just a weapon. It was a symbol. It was a symbol of human ingenuity, determination, and the sheer will to survive. As the days passed, tensions between Earth and the Empire continued to rise. Rumors of the Empire's plans to attack Earth began circulating, and it became clear that the Vanguard would be needed sooner rather than later. John and his crew had little time to prepare, but they knew one thing: they would fight. The Vanguard was ready, its sleek silver hull gleaming under the light of the distant stars. Its weapons systems were state-of-the-art, its defenses stronger than anything Earth had ever produced. Its eye, a creation of the best minds on Earth, was designed to think faster than any human could, making it a deadly weapon in the hands of the right captain. John stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, staring out into the black void of space. His crew was at their stations, preparing for what would be the greatest challenge humanity had ever faced. John took a deep breath, his mind racing. He knew what was coming. The Empire would not go easy on them. But Earth wasn't going to surrender, not without a fight. With a final glance at his crew, John gave the order. Prepare for launch. The Vanguard was about to take its first steps into the unknown, and John Davis was ready to lead humanity into a battle that would determine whether Earth would rise or fall. The tension on Earth was palpable as the first signs of the Galactic Empire's approach began to show. Humanity had never faced a threat of this magnitude, but Captain John Davis and his crew aboard the Vanguard were ready. Earth's greatest secret, the warship, was about to be put to the test. They had no choice. The Empire had underestimated them for too long. Admiral Corrin was the face of the Empire's arrogance. A tall, broad-shouldered man with sharp eyes and a voice that seemed to echo with authority. Corrin had a reputation for being ruthless and dismissive. He believed that no species in the galaxy could challenge the Empire's might, and Earth was no different. In his mind, the tiny planet was just another small, insignificant world, one that was better off staying out of the Empire's way. During his visit to Earth, Corrin had made it clear just how little he thought of the humans. Earth's leaders had invited him to discuss peace, but Corrin had turned the meeting into a display of superiority. He had laughed at their plans, sneered at their efforts, and mocked their military capabilities. The Earthlings, he had said with a sneer, still think they can create something to challenge us. It's almost endearing. His words stung, but John wasn't just angry. He was determined. It was clear to him that the Empire did not view humanity as a threat. They saw Earth as weak, unworthy of respect. Corrin had even gone so far as to make jokes about Earth's attempts to develop a warship capable of facing the Empire's fleet. In one meeting, Corrin had looked at the Earth representatives, smirking. Your prototypes are laughable. The Empire's fleet could obliterate anything you throw at us. You should thank us for not taking Earth off the map already. John, who had been present in that room, had to bite his tongue. His fists clenched at his sides, but he didn't speak. The Earth leaders had no way of knowing about the Vanguard yet, but John could see their faces fall at Corrin's cruel words. The realization hit him like a bolt. The Empire was about to make its move. They were treating Earth like a plaything, and soon enough, they would strike. Back in the quiet depths of Earth's military command center, John met with his trusted officers. The atmosphere was tense, but they all knew what had to be done. There was no turning back now. Admiral Corrin thinks he's invincible, John said, his voice steady but with a fire burning behind his eyes. He thinks we're nothing. Engineer Alex, the genius behind the Vanguard, looked up from the star map they were using to track the Empire's fleet movements. We've got the Vanguard ready, Captain. The ship's systems are stable, but we need to be smart. We can't take on the entire fleet head-to-head. John nodded. We don't have to. We'll make them come to us. We'll use the Vanguard's speed and its stealth capabilities to our advantage. Corrin will never see us coming. Commander Rachel, who had been quietly reviewing their tactics, finally spoke. It's not just about the ship, though. We need to think about how we're going to fight back when they underestimate us. We'll hit them where they least expect it, John replied, a plan already forming in his mind. The Empire doesn't know what they're up against. Meanwhile, Corrin's fleet, the largest ever assembled, was on its way to Earth. Thousands of warships, destroyers, and dreadnoughts filled the space between Earth and the Empire's capital. The sheer size of the fleet was enough to make any enemy tremble, but Corrin wasn't concerned about the humans. He believed they were no match for the might of the Empire. The ships in his fleet had been tested in countless battles, and their firepower was unmatched. As they entered the solar system, Corrin stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dreadstar. It was a massive vessel, equipped with the most powerful weapons known in the galaxy. He looked out at the stars, a smug smile on his face as Earth grew closer. The humans are still cowering in their little cities, Corrin remarked, turning to his second-in-command. We'll strike fast and hard. They'll never know what hit them. But what Corin didn't know was that Earth had prepared for this moment. The Vanguard was unlike anything the Empire had ever seen, and John Davis was determined to make the Empire regret their dismissal of humanity. Earth was about to show them that their mockery would cost them dearly. As the Vanguard prepared for launch, John stood at the bridge, watching the stars outside. He knew what was coming, but he also knew that, for once, humanity had the upper hand. The battle would be a long one, but it would be one that the Empire would never forget. And for the first time, Earth would prove that they weren't just some small, insignificant world. They were ready to fight back. The day had finally come. Earth's most powerful weapon, the Vanguard, was ready. The ship had been built in secret, a marvel of human engineering. And now it was time to see if it could live up to its promises. Captain John Davis stood on the bridge, staring at the massive starship in front of him. The Vanguard was sleek, its silver hull reflecting the stars as it prepared to leave Earth's atmosphere. It looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Small by comparison to the Empire's massive warships, but packed with technology that no other species had. "All right," he said, taking a deep breath. "We do this smart. The Empire won't know what hit them." With that, he ordered Terra to begin evasive maneuvers. The Vanguard quickly darted through space, its small size and high speed making it a difficult target for the Empire's larger ships. The Vanguard could shift in and out of space, making it practically invisible to the enemy's tracking systems. It was a technology the Empire had never seen before, and John knew it would give them the upper hand, if they used it wisely. The crew, carefully selected for their skills and determination, had gathered around their stations, ready for the mission ahead. John's mind raced. He had trained for this moment for years, but now that it was here, he couldn't help but feel the weight of responsibility. Earth was counting on them, and if the Vanguard failed, humanity's future would be in the hands of the Empire. "Captain, the ship is ready for launch," Alex, the ship's lead engineer, called out from the control panel. His face was lit by the glow of the screens in front of him, his eyes focused but filled with a quiet excitement. John gave a short nod. "Let's do this." The Vanguard slowly ascended from Earth's surface, the engines roaring to life. The ground trembled beneath them, but there was no turning back now. The Empire's fleet was closing in on Earth, and the Vanguard was humanity's last hope. The ship's advanced AI, named Terra, would be their guide. Terra had been designed to learn, adapt, and make decisions in the heat of battle. The ship was more than just a machine. It was a partner. As the Vanguard broke through Earth's atmosphere, the crew felt the familiar sense of weightlessness, but there was no time to relax. They were heading straight for the Empire's fleet, and John could feel the tension building in the air. "We're entering the Empire's zone," Rachel, the ship's commander, announced. "Their fleet is on the edge of the system." John nodded and turned to Terra. "What's the situation? Can you track their fleet's movements?" Terra's calm voice filled the bridge. "Empire fleet is 3.4 light-years from Earth. The flagship, Dreadstar, is leading the charge. I am calculating optimal approach routes now." "Good. Let's not waste any time," John said, his voice steady. "Prepare the weapons and shield systems. We're going to need everything we've got." The Vanguard had been designed with weapons unlike any the Empire had ever encountered. Instead of relying on traditional firepower, the ship's weapon systems harnessed advanced energy manipulation, allowing them to fire blasts of concentrated energy with pinpoint accuracy. The ship's shields were also highly advanced, designed to absorb and redistribute energy. But the Vanguard wasn't just a ship, it was a living entity in its own way, with the ability to think, adapt, and fight back with an intelligence that rivaled even the best human minds. As the crew moved into position, John took a moment to look out of the viewports. The stars outside were beautiful, but they weren't there to admire the view. They were there to fight. The Vanguard might have been Earth's greatest achievement, but it still needed to prove itself in battle. "There they are," Rachel said, her voice tense. "The Dreadstar and its fleet are coming into range." John's heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't let his nerves show. This was what they had trained for. This was the moment when Earth would either rise or fall. As the Empire's fleet grew closer, the vanguard moved into position, preparing to strike. The Dreadstar was a massive ship, but it was slow. John's plan was simple: use the vanguard's agility to outmaneuver the Empire's fleet and strike where it would hurt the most. Lock onto their weaker ships first, John ordered. The Dreadstar is the main target, but we need to weaken their defenses before we go for it. The crew nodded, their focus sharp. Rachel and Alex worked in perfect sync, while Tara's AI guided them through the complex calculations needed to make the first strike. John watched as the vanguard moved into position, its weapon systems humming with power. The first shot rang out, an energy blast so precise it hit an Empire destroyer right in its weak spot, disabling it before it even had a chance to fight back. The Empire fleet was caught off guard. "They're starting to panic," Rachel said, a grin crossing her face. "They didn't think we could hit this hard." John's eyes never left the viewports. This is just the beginning. The battle had begun, and Earth's vanguard was showing the Empire just how wrong they had been about humanity. The battle had started, and the vast emptiness of space was filled with chaos. The vanguard darted through the stars, its sleek form maneuvering like a shadow in the dark, slipping in and out of space in ways the Empire had never expected. Captain John Davis gripped the controls firmly, his eyes locked on the enemy fleet as the adrenaline kicked in. The Empire's ships were powerful, but they had never faced a ship like the Vanguard. A ship that could move faster, hit harder, and adapt quicker than any of them ever imagined. "Captain, the Dreadstar is within range," Rachel, the ship's commander, called out. Her voice was calm, but John could hear the tension in it. The Empire's flagship was the heart of their fleet, and taking it down would send a clear message. "Take it slow," John ordered. "We need to weaken their support ships first. No point in going straight for the Dreadstar while they still have backup." The Vanguard sped toward a group of Empire destroyers, massive ships bristling with weapons. But the Empire had underestimated Earth's warship. The Vanguard wasn't like anything they'd ever seen. It was small, yes, but its weapons were incredibly powerful. The energy blasts from the ship's cannons were precise, cutting through the Empire's shields like a knife through butter. The Vanguard unleashed its first round of fire, hitting one destroyer squarely in its weak spot. The enemy ship was torn apart in seconds, and the explosion sent shockwaves through space. Direct hit. Alex, the ship's engineer, shouted from his console, his voice filled with pride. They didn't even see it coming. John's eyes stayed focused on the unfolding battle. His plan was working. The Empire's ships were too slow, too bulky, and too predictable. The Vanguard was a blur in the darkness, firing, and then vanishing before the Empire's ships could retaliate. The crew had trained for this, and now it was paying off. The Empire's fleet, once so confident, was starting to fall apart. But it wasn't over yet. The Vanguard had only taken down a few smaller ships, but the Dreadstar was still a serious threat. John knew that if they wanted to win, they needed to deal with the flagship. If they could take out the heart of the Empire's fleet, the rest would scatter. "Lock onto the Dreadstar," John ordered. "Let's take this fight to them." Rachel moved quickly, inputting commands into the ship's systems. "The Dreadstar has heavy shielding, Captain. It won't go down easily." "I'm counting on you, Rachel," John replied, his voice steady. "We've got one shot at this." The Vanguard shot forward once again, its engines roaring as it closed in on the flagship. The Dreadstar loomed large, its dark silhouette blocking out the stars. John could see the Empire's fleet rearranging itself around it, trying to protect their flagship. But it was too late. The Vanguard had already chosen its target. "Full power to the front shields," Rachel said, her fingers flying over the controls. "We're going in." John braced himself as the ship shot forward at full speed, the Dreadstar growing larger in the viewports. The Empire's ships tried to react, but the Vanguard was too fast. It zipped between them, barely dodging their blasts, until it was in range of the Dreadstar itself. "Fire!" John shouted. The Vanguard unleashed a concentrated beam of energy straight at the Dreadstar. The beam hit its shields with an explosive impact, but the flagship's defenses held strong. The energy burst seemed to ripple across the Dreadstar, but it didn't break through. John cursed under his breath. The Dreadstar's shields were stronger than he'd anticipated. "Damn it, those shields are tougher than we thought." Alex muttered from his station. "We're going to need more power." "We can do this," Rachel said. "We've got to hit them harder." John nodded. The Vanguard had been designed for this very moment. Its weapons were adaptable, capable of adjusting to the enemy's defenses. If the first shot didn't work, they could try another approach. "Alex, reroute all power to the main cannon," John ordered. "Let's break those shields." Alex worked quickly, adjusting the energy flow. "Power is increasing, Captain. Ready to fire on your command." John's heart raced. The Vanguard was built for speed and precision, but it wasn't invincible. If they couldn't break through the Dreadstar's defenses, they would have to rethink their strategy. The stakes had never been higher. "Now," John said, his voice sharp and decisive. "Fire again." This time, the Vanguard fired with full power. The energy beam struck the Dreadstar's shields with a blinding flash of light. The shield shimmered and sparked, but this time, the energy punched through. The Dreadstar shook, its hull groaning under the strain as the first layer of its defenses collapsed. "They're losing shields," Rachel exclaimed. "We've got a shot." John didn't hesitate. "Keep firing. Hit them while they're down." The Vanguard fired again, this time sending a barrage of energy blasts that tore through the weakened defenses. The Dreadstar rocked as the blasts hit, and for the first time, the Empire flagship was visibly damaged. John could see the shock in the faces of the enemy fleet. The Dreadstar, their most powerful warship, was being brought down by a single ship, the Vanguard. The tide of the battle had turned, but there was still more to do. John knew the Dreadstar wouldn't go down without a fight. The Empire wasn't finished yet. The real battle had just begun. The Vanguard had landed its first powerful blow, but the battle was far from over. John Davis watched as the Dreadstar staggered, its shields weakening under the relentless fire from Earth's warship. His heart raced, but he knew better than to get complacent. The Empire wasn't going to give up easily, and the Dreadstar still had plenty of firepower left. "We've got their attention now," Rachel said, her voice tight with concentration. "The rest of the fleet is closing in on us." John looked at the viewports. The Empire's remaining ships, smaller but still formidable, were shifting into position. They had regrouped and were now coming after the Vanguard, eager to protect their flagship. John could see the Dreadstar's guns powering up, ready to fire back with everything they had. "Hold steady," John ordered. "We're not done yet." "Alex, how's the power?" "We're pushing the systems to their limits, but we've got enough power for one more big strike," Alex replied, his fingers flying across the control panel. "The Vanguard is holding up, but we need to be careful. We can't afford to waste any shots." "Understood," John said. "Rachel, give me a evasive pattern. We can't let them pin us down." "On it," Rachel answered, her hands moving quickly over the controls. The Vanguard began to dart and twist through space, avoiding enemy fire with skillful precision. Its agility was the key to its survival, and John knew they had to keep moving to stay ahead of the Empire's powerful guns. As the Vanguard weaved through the enemy fleet, the Empire's ships opened fire, their blasts lighting up the void of space. But the Vanguard was too fast. It zipped past a destroyer, its energy shields absorbing a direct hit, but not buckling under the force. The ship fired back, hitting the destroyer's engines with a perfect shot, causing it to explode in a burst of light. "They're panicking," Rachel shouted. "The smaller ships are retreating." "Good," John said. "Let them run. Focus on the Dreadstar." The Empire's flagship was now almost defenseless. The Vanguard had cracked its shields, and a remaining firepower from the smaller ships wasn't enough to stop them. John could see the Dreadstar trying to reposition itself, but it was too slow. The Vanguard moved in again, this time with even more precision. "Terra, lock on to the Dreadstar's weak points," John ordered, his voice calm but urgent. "We're going for the engines." Terra's voice came through the comm system. "Locking on. Calculating optimal shot trajectory." John could feel the tension in the air as the ship locked onto the target. He could hear the hum of the ship's systems powering up for one final strike. The Vanguard's energy weapons began to charge, and John knew this would be the decisive blow. "Now fire," John shouted. The Vanguard unleashed a powerful blast that streaked through space, hitting the Dreadstar squarely in its engine room. The ship rocked violently as the energy blast tore through its outer hull, and the entire fleet could see the Dreadstar's engines flicker and die. For a moment, the flagship appeared to hang in space, vulnerable and helpless. "We did it," Alex said, his voice full of disbelief. "Their engines are gone. The Dreadstar is disabled." John didn't allow himself to relax. He knew the Empire wouldn't give up that easily. Even without its engines, the Dreadstar still had weapons, and the smaller ships in the fleet were likely to try to protect it at all costs. John turned to Rachel. "Keep us moving. We can't stay in one place too long." Rachel quickly responded, and the Vanguard was off again, avoiding the last-ditch efforts of the remaining enemy ships to corner them. The Vanguard was smaller and faster than the Empire's ships, but there was no time to waste. They had to finish the job. Meanwhile, the Empire's fleet was in disarray. The Dreadstar was the keystone of their entire force, and without it, the rest of the fleet had no direction. The Empire's remaining ships scattered, some attempting to escape, others fighting back in a desperate attempt to protect their flagship. But without the power of the Dreadstar, they were losing their will to fight. "They're retreating," Rachel reported. "The rest of the fleet is scattering. They're trying to make a break for it." John felt a surge of hope, but he kept his focus sharp. "Stay on them. Let's not let any of them get away." The Vanguard turned and chased down one of the Empire's smaller ships, disabling it with a series of well-placed shots. The rest of the enemy fleet was in full retreat now, and it was clear that the Empire had underestimated humanity's strength. The tables had turned, and the Vanguard was proving that Earth wasn't as weak as the Empire had thought. But even as the battle seemed to be winding down, John knew the fight wasn't over yet. The Empire would come back. They always did, but for today, Earth had won. And that victory would send a message across the galaxy. Humanity wasn't just another species to be crushed under the Empire's heel. They were a force to be reckoned with. John's gaze remained fixed on the stars ahead. The fight was far from over, but Earth had just proven it could stand its ground. And that was only the beginning. The battle was over, but the victory felt hollow. John Davis stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, staring out at the remnants of the Empire's fleet. The Dreadstar was drifting in space, its once mighty form crippled and burning. A few smaller ships were attempting to escape, but the Vanguard had already dealt with most of them. The Empire had been dealt a heavy blow, but John knew it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. "We did it," Rachel said quietly from her station, her voice tired but filled with relief. "We stopped them." John didn't reply immediately. Instead, he turned to face his crew, his mind racing. Yes, they had won, but there was so much more to consider. The Empire would be back, and they would come in greater numbers. The Vanguard had proven itself in battle, but John knew one ship couldn't win a war. Not on its own. "We've only won the first battle," John said, breaking the silence. "The Empire won't stop. We need to get back to Earth and prepare for the next fight." "Are you sure we can do that?" Alex, the lead engineer, asked from his console. "The Vanguard systems are pushed to the limit. We need to make repairs, and we don't have much time." John nodded. He knew Alex was right. The Vanguard had taken a beating during the battle, and while it was still functional, it wouldn't last long without repairs. The last thing they needed was to be stranded in space without the ability to defend themselves. "We'll get back to Earth," John said. "We have to. It's the only place where we can regroup. Get the ship ready for the journey home. Alex, Rachel, keep an eye on our fuel levels. I don't want any surprises." "Understood," Rachel said. Alex nodded and quickly started working on his console, his fingers moving rapidly over the keys. The crew was moving with purpose now, no longer celebrating their victory, but focusing on the challenges ahead. There was still so much to do. The Vanguard might have won the battle, but Earth's war against the Empire was just beginning. As they made their way back toward Earth, John's thoughts turned to the people waiting for them back home. The fight had taken a toll on the crew, and John knew that they would need to rest and recover. But there was no time for peace. The Empire was powerful, and if they wanted to survive, they would have to be ready for anything. Hours passed in silence, the vastness of space stretching before them as the Vanguard limped back to Earth. The quiet was almost unbearable, the only sounds coming from the hum of the ship's engines and the occasional beep of a console. John sat in his chair, staring at the stars, his mind lost in thought. "How long until we reach Earth?" Rachel asked, breaking the silence. "We're still a few days out," John replied. "But we need to be ready. The Empire won't give up just because we got a victory." "I know," Rachel said, "but for now, we can rest. We've earned that." John glanced over at her, but he couldn't bring himself to smile. Rest was a luxury they couldn't afford. The Empire would regroup, and when they came back, they would come with everything they had. Earth needed more than just the Vanguard. It needed an army, a fleet to defend itself. One ship could only do so much. "We can rest when we're back on Earth," John said, his voice firm. "We'll figure out what comes next, but right now we need to stay sharp. We don't know when the Empire will strike again." The crew nodded, their expressions serious. They knew the fight wasn't over. The Empire had underestimated humanity before, but now they knew what Earth was capable of. The Vanguard had just given humanity a taste of what they could do, but that wasn't enough. They would need more ships, more weapons, and more allies. The Vanguard finally entered Earth's orbit, its damaged hull reflecting the blue of the planet below. John let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. They were home. For now, Earth was safe, but the war was far from over. They needed to rebuild, and they needed to prepare. The next battle could come at any time. "We're home," Rachel said, her voice softer now. John nodded. "We've won this fight, but we're just getting started." The Vanguard made its way toward Earth's surface, and John couldn't help but think about the long road ahead. The Empire was still out there, and they would be coming back. But Earth had proven something important that day. It had proven that humanity was not to be underestimated, and that was something the Empire would soon learn the hard way. The Vanguard landed on Earth's surface with a soft thud, its damaged hull groaning as it touched down. The crew didn't cheer. There was no celebration. They had returned home, yes, but the victory they'd won felt distant, overshadowed by the looming threat of the Empire. The war was far from over, and they knew it. John Davis stood at the ship's hatch, waiting for the ramp to lower. The cool, familiar air of Earth greeted him as he stepped out, his boots clicking on the ground. The crew followed, their faces weary but resolute. The damage to the Vanguard was significant, but the ship had held together, just as they had. "Let's get to the command center," John said. "We need to report in." Rachel, Tara, Alex, and the rest of the crew followed closely behind. The military base wasn't far, and soon they were walking through its halls, the weight of their success and the burden of the war ahead pressing on them. Inside the command center, a crowd of officers and military personnel was already waiting. The general stepped forward to greet them. his expression stern but relieved. "Captain Davis, your team did the impossible," the general said, shaking John's hand. "You've hit the Empire hard, but we know this isn't over." John nodded. "We've only won one battle. The Empire will regroup, and they'll come back stronger." "We're preparing for that," the general replied. "But we'll need more ships, more resources, and most importantly, more support from Earth's allies. The Vanguard proved humanity has the strength to fight back, but we need more." John looked around at his crew, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and determination. The battle they had fought and won was only the beginning. Earth needed to stand united, and it needed to be ready for what the Empire would throw at them next. "We've made allies across the galaxy," Rachel spoke up. "Earth isn't alone in this fight. There are other species who are watching, waiting to see what we do next." "And that's important," John added. "But we can't just rely on them. We have to build up our own forces. The Vanguard can't be the only ship that stands against the Empire. We need a fleet." The general nodded. "We'll make it happen, but it'll take time." Time was something John wasn't sure they had. The Empire wasn't known for being patient, and the damage to Earth's forces was already significant. They had to rebuild quickly, before the Empire launched its next attack. The Vanguard had proven that humanity had the will to fight, but they still lacked the numbers to take on the Empire's full might. "We'll need more than just ships," Alex said from behind them. "We'll need new technology, better weapons, and more training. This won't be a quick fix." "We'll work on all of it," the general said, "but we need to move fast." John took a deep breath, turning his gaze to the large map of the galaxy that filled the wall. The Empire's territories stretched far and wide, but now there was a crack in their armor. Earth had shown the galaxy that it could stand against the Empire, and that message was spreading. "Get started on the plans," John ordered. "We'll need to prepare for the long haul. This war isn't over, not by a long shot." As the crew began to disperse, John stayed behind for a moment, staring out the window. Earth was still here. They had fought back and won a victory, but the war had just begun. The Empire would be relentless, and Earth would have to be just as determined. But John knew something that the Empire didn't. Humanity had already proven it could survive the impossible. And now, Earth was ready to show the galaxy that it wasn't just a fragile species. It was a force to be reckoned with. The next battle was coming, and Earth would be ready. Days turned into weeks, and Earth's military began to rebuild. The Vanguard was repaired, and the crew continued training, preparing for the challenges ahead. They reached out to allies, forging new partnerships and strengthening old ones. And slowly, Earth began to build its fleet. The people of Earth were united like never before, determined to defend their home and their future. But through it all, John never forgot what the victory meant. It wasn't just about defeating the Empire's fleet. It was about proving humanity's strength to the galaxy. Earth had taken a stand, and now the galaxy knew what humanity was capable of. The war was far from over, but John Davis knew one thing for certain. Humanity was ready to fight for its place in the stars.